Hey everybody, how you doing? This is about to be a really fun video, so check this out. A week or two ago, I picked up this baby. I went into my local spot, Tolliver's. Shout out to Tolliver's in Manchester. And they said, hey, we got a 260 Remington traded in. What do you think about it? And you know, of course I had to pick it up. It's my goal to have videos and knowledge on everything. So I picked up this 260 Remington. If you missed the video of me getting this thing sighted in, go check it out. It actually did pretty good. It's a Savage 10 Predator from a little bit ago, when they called the short actions a 10 instead of a 110 like they do now. But I put a different rail on it. I put this Arkin SH4J on top of it. Lots of zoomies, good long range, affordable scope. And it did good. So then my thoughts were, what is a 260? Now I got to learn about 260 Remington, and that's part of what this video is about. But then I realized, well, a 260 uses a 6.5 projectile, like a 6.5 Creedmoor, which is also 0.264 inch projectile. So I would guarantee you, a bunch of you could not differentiate with the eyeball between a 260 Remington and a 6.5 Creedmoor. Just for fun real quick, let me show you them side by side. You comment down below, is the 6.5 Creedmoor the left or the right next to this 260 Remington? Look at this. All right, now, you tell me which one is the 6.5 Creedmoor and which one is the 260 Remington. All right, I'll give you 5 more seconds. Which one's which? All right, I'm just messing with you. Both those were 6.5 Creedmoors. Now I'll actually put it next to a 260 Remington. Check this out. So this actually is a 260 Remington. You can see there is a slight difference. The one on the right is a 260 Remington. Appears to have the same overall length-ish. And it would appear to have a bigger case capacity. Bigger case capacity means more powder. But yeah, that's a 260 Remington on the right there, and a 6.5 Creedmoor on the left. So, and when I picked up the 260 and started digging into some of this data, that brought up the question, why is the 260 Remington starting to go by the wayside? It's not disappeared. You can still get quite a bit of factory ammo. And why is 6.5 Creedmoor so popular? So, when companies come out with anything new, what's the first one they loaded in? 6.5 Creedmoor. For whatever reason, 6.5 Creedmoor has been the hottest craze in the last probably 3 or 4 years, maybe even longer. Probably longer than that. And I don't know a single other person, personally, that has a 260 Remington. So all that being said, let's look at a bunch of factory loadings. I think I did 7 factory loadings of 6.5 Creedmoor, 7 factory loadings of 260 Remington, and just put them side by side. I've got quite a few different, projectile weights in here. What's the fastest? What has the most energy? What drops the least? And I think you're going to see, just like I did, some interesting stuff. A whole part of this is for me to educate myself on 260 Remington. And I did all this work, and I'm just passing the information along to you. So, all that being said, let's dive into the data, and I'll pop it up on the screen here. So just a quick info. If you've seen my videos on this stuff before, you kind of know how this goes, but real quick. First column, muzzle velocity. Again, these are all factory loadings. I know we could sit here and say, oh, I can load my blah, blah, blah hotter than that. I get it. But hand loading doesn't apply to a majority of people, so we're talking factory loads right here. So first column, muzzle velocity. Second column is the G1 ballistic coefficient. And then my assumption is 2 inches over bore for the scope, and everything sighted in at 100 yards. That being said, let's take a look at it. So drop in inches, if it's sighted in at 100 yards, red means it's dropping the fastest for that column. Bright green means it's dropping the least. And yellow means it's kind of average. It's in the middle of everything. So right off the bat, which one of these loadings out of these 14 factory loadings, half 6.5, half 260, what drops the fastest? It is a 6.5 Creedmoor. Interesting. That red line across the top. That Remington Core-Lokt is loaded the softest out of all these 14. Then when we look at what drops the least, well, across the board, it's a 260 Remington. Nosler matched their RDF projectile, 130 grain. So when you go read forums and all these outdoor riders who just spit you a bunch of nonsense that they don't know what they're talking about, the conversation is, oh, a 6.5 Creedmoor can be loaded with higher BC projectiles so it bucks the wind better and it drops less. Well, I went and studied 14 different factory loadings, and the best performance as far as drop is a 260 Remington. I'm actually going to pick some of those up. It's that 2,900 feet per second loaded, 0.615 G1 ballistic coefficient, 130 grain. Drops 2.6 inches at 200 yards, 500 yards, it's 43 inches. And then all the way out to 1,000 yards, it only drops 273 inches. That's flat. That is pretty flat. So out of these 14 that I checked, and I didn't cherry pick these, your argument might be first to jump, well, you could load that same 0.615 Nosler in the 6.5 Creedmoor. Yeah, you could. But guess what? Nosler doesn't load that projectile in the 6.5 Creedmoor. They only load it in the 260 Remington. So when you talk about, well, what's the best 6.5 Creedmoor? Well, if somebody's going to go do long range, I would. A lot of people have this stuff. It's the 140 grain match. It has high BC. Even better one is the 147 grain. So let's look at those, because those are probably the most popular people 6.5 Creedmoor. So yes, they do have a high BC. This is a 140 grain is a 0.646 G1. 147 grain is a 0.697 G1 BC, which is higher than that one that I said is the flattest, to 1,000. But they're loaded slower. This is all a calculation of the inputs are how fast is it, what's the G1 BC, and what's the projectile weight. So those are heavier with a higher BC, yeah, but they're also slower. So those numbers put together, that 2,900 feet per second Nosler 260 Remington drops less than those. So again, this isn't everything out there, but I went and grabbed a bunch of the most popular factory loadings from Remington and Hornady and Nosler, and this is the results, guys. Out of all these 14, the flattest one is a 260 Remington. So I'm going to try to pick some of that Nosler up and just see how it does. I also picked up dies. Shout out to my buddy Craig. I didn't pick it up. He mailed it to me. 260 Remington. So I'm going to be loading some of these. It's raining a lot this week. Man, that camera's washing out the words, isn't it? 260 Remington. So I want to be trying out some loads maybe this week if I get the time to it. Okay, so you guys can freeze that. I've already rambled on a lot about it. Some of the data is very comparable. If you look at those drops across the board, you might pick out like 700 yards. A bunch of those drop within an inch or 2 or 10 of each other. And it's really not that big of a deal to sit here and argue with it. You know, some of y'all old school dudes will love your 260 Remingtons. Some of you new school dudes will say, I love 6.5 Creedmoor. I don't really care one way or another. Some people will cuss me in the comments every day. You're dumb. I love this. Hey, I'm cool with whatever, man. Whatever you want to rock at the range or in the woods is cool with me. Do your thing, man. People get real worked up about this stuff. Anyways, so what if your question was, should I get a a 6.5 Creedmoor or 260 Remington? You know, well, your obvious answer might be, well, it's a lot easier to get 6.5 Creedmoor ammo everywhere. That is true. But that point aside, if you said, I want factory loadings that drops less, we just talked about all that. Well, what if your question was, well, which one has the most energy? You're talking energy, a lot of times that's more of a hunting perspective. Energy, you know, at long range stuff, yeah, drop is cool, but does it really matter if you slap that piece of steel or that paper with 1,500 foot-pounds of energy or 1,450? Not really. Hunting, it's more of a consideration, at least in my perspective. So now let's bring all that up. It's the same rounds, but talking about energy. Well, guess what? It's pretty much the same graph. The ones that dropped the least and had the highest BC carry out the most energy the furthest. So the red line's still at the top as far as energy. And then those match loads from Hornady with the high BC, they carry the most energy further. Those aren't hunting rounds. Some people say they hunt with them. I've never tried it. I've had people say it works. I've had people say it doesn't. My opinion, hunt with a dedicated hunting round. Then you look at the 260 Remington. Some of those are in the green too. Those 140 grain matches, which I actually have some right here. Remington still loads a match load with a high BC in the 260 Remington. That one's colored green in the energy chart. And then also that Nosler 130 grain at 2,900 feet per second. Man, that thing's cooking, isn't it? But it's got a good BC. All that being said, it's pretty comparable. Pretty comparable. I'll pop up the pretty picture of the projectile drop. All the lines are stacked at 400 yards, meaning it's really insignificant drop between all 14 of these out to 400 yards. At 600 yards, it kind of spreads out. At 1,000, it's a lot bigger spread, but to 400 yards, it really doesn't matter which 6.5 Creedmoor or which 260 Remington you pick up. The drop curve is very close. So if you're going to go plinking at 1,000 yards, yeah, then it kind of matters and makes it easier for you with certain projectiles. Now the curve of the energy is a little bit different, but energy at distance, there you go. It's a picture. But hey, appreciate you watching. Put down in the comments down below which one is your favorite, 6.5 Creedmoor or 260 Remington. They both use the 6.5 projectiles or 264 projectiles. And really when it comes down to it, the data is really close. Again, if you want to take a look at these, go back, freeze the video, study it. Hopefully it helped you out. But now we know. There's the data. I triple checked all these numbers. But hey, appreciate you watching. I took 6.5 Creedmoor to Africa with me this past August, hunted with it. And it did great on African animals. So a lot of people call it the 6.5 needs more. There's ranches that won't let you hunt with it. The people in Africa actually didn't want me to hunt with it, and I had to kind of convince them to let me. Now I need to take a deer with the 260 Remington. So stay tuned. I've got more coming. With this one, I really like this one. It has a pretty heavy barrel, and it's fluted. Problem is it's not threaded. So I may get this one threaded, but it might be easier for me to just get rid of this one and then get the new one from Savage, the 110 Predator that is threaded. But then I run the risk of the new one not being as good as this one. So I'm kind of torn. I'm not kidding. I've probably had 20 people message me, call me, say, don't get rid of that one. Let me get it. Yeah, I want it so bad. It has a really nice trigger in it. I actually really like this one. Nice trigger. But yeah, stay tuned. Lots more coming. Wanted to do this quick video comparing 6.5 Creedmoor and 260 Remington. What do you think? I'm picking 260 Remington just because I like to be more weird. But that's just me. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. If you haven't already, make sure you sign up for the free newsletter on WHOTEEWHO.com and check out everything we got going on over there. Appreciate y'all. We'll see you on the next one. Woohoo!